Good morning, sir.
It's okay. Today we will continue with where we left yesterday. I think we talked about this particular concept where we looked at the outdated assumptions of human resource management, right? And today we will look at another part where we have just listed three things. One thing that we know is that changes in the environment that we have noted, which organizations operate today, is permanent. Only thing that is permanent in the world is change. Rest, everything is temporary, and there are some exceptions. One exception is that if you are earning, you have to pay taxes, right? That is an exception. Other than that, changes are permanent and everything else is temporary in nature. As far as the organizations are concerned, the situation in the organizations are more fluid than anywhere else. And therefore, what we find that more than ever, organizations are likely to be fluid, continually changing, and have many new relationships from joint ventures, alliances, partnerships, to use of vendors and subcontractors, right? So these are the things that we are experiencing as on today. But as we are sharing, this admission will have to stop. Just a minute, let me finish till 25, then I'll start all over again. Because people do not understand and they join at 25 minutes past. They're so important jobs they have. Okay, it's already 25, so now nobody will be admitted. Now, what we find that embedded organizations are continually under pressure to increase outputs, improve cycle time, and enhance competitiveness. Here we are trying to gain or regain competitive advantage because we have lost it. Therefore, we call them an embattled organizations. Skills as such and talents are to be hired as needed rather than developed internally over a long period. Conversely, employees not needed should be quickly converted or disposed of. So those who are not needed today will no longer be there. Now, in organizations today, we have got to look at some of the facts with regard to workforce diversity. We find that almost half a century ago, human resource management was considered simpler because our workforce was strikingly homogeneous, as we have said. And in 50s, for example, the Indian workforce consisted primarily urban male, employed in manufacturing, who had wives, who stayed at home, tended to the family's 2+ children. They knew more than one languages. They were members of more than one clubs. That was there. So that was the kind of thing. They were the people who always remained in suit and tie when they were attending to the office, so they were highly formal. It is also noticed that they continued to be, trying to look like a gentleman. Just a minute. बेटा क्लास में हूँ मैं, क्लास में हूँ बेटा मैं. Now, in as much as these workers were alike, personnel job was certainly simpler, right? But as we proceed further, what we find is that this has, of course, changed in today's environment. Recruiting for these workers was done locally. If in fact new employers were related to a current worker, because those workers all shared the same interests and needs. And mostly it was with the contact of these people that the recruitment was being done. Or the organizations would send the recruiters door to door and find out these employees. That was there. In terms of legislation and reservation policies, much of the change that has occurred in the workforce is attributed to passage of a series of legislations that we have already mentioned, right? Now, there were excess and shortage of manpower. I think I made a mention of it. During this period of time, birth rates in Indian states began to increase at an increasing rate, and the globalization that followed later on, it opened the doors for employees to go out and seek employment in other parts of the world. So globalization that was initially thought of to be threatening Indian industries basically gave impetus to employment, and now people are going to other states for seeking employment. We also find that the share of women worker, as we mentioned, increased during this particular period of time. And with that, I think there are many changes that really occurred. Initially, what we find that most managers who were coming to the industries were from public school background. A public school is the convent schools where English used to be compulsory, and they came from mostly middle class families or upper middle class families, or they were sons or daughters of executives. We also find that they came primarily from urban areas as against the rural areas. So urban and semi-urban area had the largest share as far as these people were concerned. And most managers were graduates, but some were high school as well, those who were having their own business. And there were few people who were not even high school, but they learned how to practice management in the organization and did not have a formal management education with them. There were few people having, diploma in management that was imparted in India during the early period of time. So those were the changes that was happening as far as the industries are concerned. And what we find is that as we progress further, these things started changing. So we found out the globalization. We had workforce diversity, skill requirements changed. We experienced corporate downsizing. Later on, we started calling it right sizing, and now we call it organizational slimming. TQM was being emphasized initially, but from TQM we moved further. We moved to Kaizen, and now we talk about Six Sigma, that is in vogue in terms of quality. Re-engineering also found a place, and therefore process re-engineering was being followed in the organization where everything was redesigned and reworked. Uh, we also experienced that as against centralization, which used to be the order of the day, we started experiencing decentralized work sites and decentralized decision making that happened, and employee involvement increased tremendously during this particular period. So these were some of the things that we experienced as far as this particular phase is concerned. Uh, Now I'll move to another topic in the syllabus that you have. Just hang on for a second, please. Systems model. Look at this particular model that is shown on the screen. Is it visible? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
This
Yes, sir.
is
Yes, sir.
systems,
Yes, sir.
systems model of organizational functions. Now on top, if you see, we are saying external environment, which is the above the dotted line. It is external environment. And the first box on the top shows governmental regulations, technology, labor market, and at the bottom, if you look at, is called societal concerns, competition, and HR state of the art. If you go to the box, second box, we find that we have on the left side strategic management system. And this strategic management system, just hang on, please. Right, I'm sorry. So what we find is that this strategic management system is interacting with the right side, which talks about goals, where we have productivity, morale, profit as the goals of the organization that is listed. And we have got feedback system. That feedback is interacting with the HR management system. HR management system comprises of planning, staffing, training and development, performance management, compensation and benefits management, and quality of work life. Now below that box, there is a smaller box with two-sided, three arrows of two-sided, which is called human resource information system, which constantly interacts with the human resource management system, and it maintains the inventory, it maintains all the data on a regular basis. Now, let us look at the first thing, that is the governmental regulations. The governmental regulations, as we all know, are having an impact on human resource management system. This human resource management system, as we said, as and when these regulations are passed, it is having an impact. For example, if you look at the reservation policies that is there, or when we talked about the concept of creamy layer that is in vogue, it is having an impact on the employment of people as far as these organizations are concerned. And therefore, as these regulations are passed by the government from time to time, and as and when this happens, it will have an impact on the human resource management, and that will be a challenge for the human resource management which is there. Now, if that is a challenge, then organizations shall have to embrace upon these changes that has occurred and comply with the orders that is being passed from time to time in terms of these organizations. Right? Then we talk about technology as yet another concept which is having an impact on the human resource management. Here I'll try and give you a specific example as to how technology is having an impact. See, technology can be of various kinds. It can relate to production technologies that is being followed, or it may lead to automation in the organization. Now, if you specifically look at automation and look at the impact of technology in India, we find that initially when computerization started in India, there was massive strikes, there were lockouts in the organizations, there were clashes of employers and employees, and therefore initially it had to be abandoned. A specific example of this automation was that in 1987, it was C. Rangarajan, who was the ex-governor of Reserve Bank of India. Professor C. Rangarajan was initially a professor at IIM Ahmedabad. He had the good fortune of attending his classes as well. C. Rangarajan was made in charge of computerization of financial sector, and banking was on the top of it. So he gave a plan that these ATMs that you are using today was a part of that automation process, first part of that automation process. And but initially it was resented by the people. So in 88, there was an agreement between the employer and the banks that all those people who accept the automation will be given 2 advance promotions. And front office computerization started. These ATMs were installed everywhere in India, but their numbers in 88 was still countable because it was less than 100. The first ATM was installed in Delhi. That was at Parliamentary Street branch. An ATM, I tell you, was put inside the bank, and it was high-level security was being placed around it. So it was not accessible to everybody at 24 hours basis. It was only operational during the working hours, because such was the concept, because we were not understanding what it is meant for. But later on, as we moved on, what we found that the female employees also started resisting. They said that if we accept computerization of front office, there will be problems. And problems that their fetus will be exposed to radiation. And therefore, all those female employees who they said if they get pregnant, their fetus will be spoiled, they will get radiated, and therefore they will not accept computerization. So the government of India, in consultation with the employees of the banking sector, mainly the female employees, they were said that the day a female employee gets to know that they are in a family way, they will be given leave for the period they are in the family way. Plus, they will avail maternity benefits that is followed, and they will continue to get salary, number one. Number two, their seniority will be counted for that particular period. And with that, they accepted computerization. But what happened that initially, if you look at the period from 1985 to the period of 1990, we can divide that into clear two periods. If 1985 to 1987, banking industry was employing 45,000 people every year, right? But as we started computerization from 1987 until the period of 1990, the average employment decreased from 45,000 employees to 5,000 employees per year. And once again, there was a strike saying that employment is decreasing and therefore we will not work. Once again, a circular came that those already in employment will not lose employment. And with that assurance, the employees continued to work. But what happened that there was a structural change in the organization. A new department was introduced in the industries, which is popularly known as CPPD, right? Computer Policy and Planning Department. And it was headed by an IT expert, IT professional who was well versed with the banking sector, or those who were not even well versed with the financial sector were employed as the head of this particular section, which created problem for the financial sector initially. It also happened that once they were given an assurance that they are not going to lose jobs, whereas front office people, there used to be almost in a decent kind of a branch. Say if you look at SBI AMU branch kind of a thing, or if you look at SBI, main branch that is there near the railway station, it used to have some 8 to 12 people who were working in the front office maintaining ledgers. There were tellers, there were people who were receiving deposits, there were people who were disbursing cash, and their numbers got reduced to 2 to 3, from 8 to 12 to 2 to 3. But what happened to those people who were working earlier in the front office? They were placed in the back office, but they were not well versed with the working of the back office. Therefore, a process of training started, which the HR people had to arrange. So it was not only that those people who lost their work. So two kinds of things happened. There were two kinds of redundancies that came into force as a result of the computerization. One was work redundancy and another one was worker redundancy. A worker redundancy is where a person loses the job altogether. He is no longer required in the organization. That was assured by the organization that there will be no worker redundancy that will take place. But work redundancy could not be ruled out. That is, if somebody was doing job X, that job X is no longer there available, and therefore he has to do job Y. But was he capable of doing job Y? Answer is no. So they had to be trained and retrained to do job Y. And therefore, multi-skilling of people started with this particular concept. But later on, what happened that portfolios of the financial sector started increasing. If there were 3 items in the portfolio of the banks in 87, today we talk about some 30 items in the portfolio of the banks. And with increase in portfolio in the long run, in the short run, employment decreased. But in the long run, of course, employment increased in this sector as a result of swelling up of the business. And therefore, what we find that this technology had an impact, and it continues to have an impact vis-a-vis efficiency, vis-a-vis employment, and other things. But training and retraining is something that became a continuous process as far as these organizations are concerned. The third item, is it clear? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, third item in the list is called labor market. See, labor market, basically here, the word labor is not in a derogatory manner or in any way referring to the daily wages. It is referring to knowledge workers or knowledge laborers that we are talking about. So we talk about the blue collar workers, we talk about high blue collar workers, we talk about the clerical personnel, we talk about the first line managers, we talk about middle manager level managers, we talk about departmental heads and chief executives of the organization who are into the policy making of the organizations. Now, what happens that if you look at labor market, that is, we are referring to supply and demand of workforce from the market. What happened? See, initially, if you look at, there were large number of people were not available as far as these managerial jobs were concerned. For example, when this computerization started in 1985 in India, every engineering college was issued a circular that they have got to establish a computer engineering department. It also happened that all universities, especially central universities to start with, and later on even the state universities were issued a circular that they have got to establish a course called MCA, that is Computer Engineering Department in their universities, and so that they can train people who are needed in large numbers in the organizations or with this automation of the industries. Now, but if you look at the labor market, as the number of graduates swelled from these institutions, unemployment also started. Therefore, what we find that labor market operates on the principles of simple supply and demand of economics. When more people are available, their salaries will go down. For example, in 1998-99, when there was a dot-com burst, that is, large number of organizations in the financial sector were closed, and these people had to find alternate employment in other sectors of employment. So that led to retraining of these people or reduction in the salaries of these people based on the labor market. So as and when there is a fluctuation in the labor market due to economic cycle or due to any accidental burst or due to slowdown that was experienced in the Western market, which also had an slightest impact on Indian market initially, was something that had an impact as a result on the labor market, and that HR policies has to be molded in accordance with that. What we find that India did not experience that much of impact of slowdown initially because we did not have this demonetization occurring before that. Had demonetization occurred and before slowdown, perhaps India would have been one of the worst hit countries in the world, because there were lots of money that was available in Indian industries vis-a-vis the hidden money that is there. So there was a parallel economy that was operating. There were cash at houses. And therefore, what we notice is that with demonetization, this money was taken out by the government. This was surrendered by people. And today, if any kind of a slowdown is going to occur, that is going to hit directly the Indian industries. And that will be, and there will be an impact on the labor market and indirect impact on the HR professionals as well. Now, coming down to the last three,
Excuse me,
the,
sir.
yeah,
Sir, what was the exact reason why there was this was there a economic slowdown in the years of like 1988 or 1989? That is why it
no, no, no,
led to
no, not in 89. 89, it was as a result of technology introduction, we said. And I was referring to only financial sector where the jobs got reduced initially because, front office people were shifted to back office. Jobs were not created initially, right? And therefore,
Okay.
demand from outside was very, very less. Internal people were not losing their jobs, but externals were not, coming into the industry. That was the time, right? But as a result of slowdown that occurred in US during the period of 2007 onwards that we experienced, it
2008
had
to
an,
be specific.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it started in 2007. That's what I said, 2007 onwards. But I said it did not have much impact on India because of the parallel economy that was available in India, and demonetization did not occur, which shattered that parallel economy. And if it happens today, that will have an impact. And therefore, what we find that labor market did have an impact. And if you look at the pandemic that has occurred, it is also having a massive impact on the labor market, and organizations has gone into the survival mode, and therefore salaries of large number of people has been increased, work methods has been changed, and so on and so forth. And therefore what we find that there is, as and when there is a fluctuation in the labor market, that is having an impact on the human resource management. This is what I tried and said. If you look at the societal concern as such, but before societal concern, I'll look at the competition. See, competition, some people may feel has got a negative impact. But from purely an HR perspective, I'll tell you competition always have a positive impact on organizations as well as on society. Why? Because as the competition increases, we are always on a lookout to find newer methods. We are always on a lookout to find newer products for survival. We are always on a lookout for diversification. That diversification may be related diversification. That diversification may be unrelated diversification. Now, if you look at the period post 1980s, see, prior to 1982, India had only two types of cars which was available in India in very, very small number. So there was Hindustan Motors producing, and there was another company called, the Italian company which used to produce Fiat. So Padmini was the most famous brand, and Ambassador was the most famous brand. Maruti initially was producing a three-wheeled vehicle, that was there. But with a change, with the competitive change that occurred, we had collaboration with the Japanese, and Maruti Suzuki came up with a new car post 1982. And if you look at what happened post that Indian industry today, we do not hear of Ambassadors and Padmini or Fiat. Today we have got large number of vehicles which are available in India as a result of competition that is started with this, that followed suit, and people got them at the much cheaper prices than it used to be available, at much easier terms and conditions for owning a vehicle. So transportation is started. With that, roads were built in India as a result of those competition. Economic growth is started with that we are experiencing. Anybody who has traveled from Aligarh to, say, you know, that expressway connecting Delhi, you would find that initially there was hardly any business that was located on the roads from Aligarh to, say, expressway. But today you would see that a large number of business houses and businesses are springing up, as a result of which condition of people are becoming better. That is as a result of competition that has started. Uh, you know. So what we find that competition would have a positive impact. And with that, society gains, with that, employment increases, with that, better products and services becomes available to people. And as it is increasing, as employment is getting created, that is also going to have an impact on the HR. In terms of societal concerns as to what business have got to do. Now, societal concern here would be when we talk about different pressure groups. So trade union is one. Other pressure groups, which is trying to influence the government, which is trying to influence the organizations to employ people from the area, to provide employment to different groups. So during the period of 1980s, there was an organization called WIPS, WIPS, Women in Public Sector, because there were very few women available in the public sector organizations during the period of 1980s. And therefore, there was a lady called Rini Ramachandran, who was with the chemicals industry in Mumbai. She started this group called WIPS, WIPS, and she started demanding initially 50% reservation in job for female employee in the public sector. Although that 50% was not agreed to by the government, but they got a 20% reservations. And 20% reservation was also applied in the academic institutions, including medical colleges, where there were 20% seats reserved for female students, and there were 20% jobs in the organizations reserved for female students. But today, neither WIFs exist, nor there is a reservation, because as we find the societal concern led to a revolution in the educational field for the female students and female workforce. And with that, today we have got large number of this intellect coming into the industry and contributing to the industry. So much so that if you look at the top 10 employee in the world who are drawing highest salaries, more than 50% of them are female employees who are the best managers in the world, and they are drawing higher salaries. And no longer any kind of sensitization as such is needed at the same scale as it was needed initially. That was the societal concern which is started, and that had an impact on the organizations. Last item in this list of 6 is, there are many, but we are only listing 6. HR is state of the art. As and when there is a change in HR, that is also having an impact on the organizations. The globalization threw open doors of the industries for people from outside. And as a result of that, the competition started. We started experiencing talent coming from outside. So that was the thing that was a result of HR state of the art, that we started changing, we started retraining, we started bringing in newer principles. The term that we hear today of work-life balance was completely missing in the organization. The maintenance function of employee, that was not there in the organizations. So what we find that as there is a change, we find that HR also experiences, if there is a change anywhere in the world, in terms of HR that is easily absorbed in the organizations in India too. And therefore, HR is state of the art will have a positive impact on the human resource management. Now, getting to the strategic management system, as we said, it is interacting with the goals because all policies, the directions that is going to be decided upon will have an impact on the goals, and directly or indirectly, that will also have an impact on the HR management system called planning, staffing, training and development, performance management, compensation and benefits management, and quality of work life. I'll specifically emphasize compensation management, compensation and benefits management that happened. See, this change as to how this compensation concept changed in India. Way back when I did my MBA, I said the highest salary was 3,250 rupees that was being offered to an initial graduate who were joining the organization. That was the highest salary. Lowest salary, as I said, was coming down to 500 rupees as well, depending on the size of the organization. So the highest salary was mostly offered by the multinational organizations which were there. I take a specific example of tire industry because I initially did my training with tires and joined my first employment with the tire industry as well. It was during training that I got employment with Goodyear Tires. Now, what happened that initially, if you look at the chief executives of this industry, they were getting 80,000 rupees per annum as their salary. And the chairman and managing director of the organization would get 1.5 lakh per annum as their salary. This is per annum, not per month. Shake-up started when merger of Firestone was there with Modi, and it became Modi Stone. And Modi, as it started producing large number of car tires, the radial tires that they started producing truck tires, they started producing tractor tires, they started producing earth mover tires and tires of all kinds. They needed employment. They needed employee. So they threw their doors open that anybody who wished to join Modi Tires, whatever salary they are getting, they just have got to produce their last pay slips, and where salary will be doubled. So that was initially that happened. And there was so massive competition, not only tire industry, but in other industries, that within 10 years of time, the salary of chief executive of the organization, which was 1.5 lakhs, increased to 50 lakhs. And as we moved on today, the salary of chief executives in large number of organizations are in several crores of rupees per annum. So that was a change. The total concept of this compensation also changed, that you perform and your salary will increase. There was nothing like a fixation that is there. So performance-based salary system came into force. Even in the teaching, if you look at the salary of an assistant professor called lecturer then was 350 rupees per month. But today, that is several times higher. The salary of a professor was 1,300 rupees. That is also has gone to almost 3 lakhs of rupees today. And an associate professor was 750 rupees. That has increased to more than 2.5 lakhs today. So what I'm saying is that there is a total change in the compensation. And with that, the contributions also change. Until and unless you contribute, the exploitations decreased in the organization with a change in this compensation package. And therefore, what we find that the concept of performance management also changed. The performance management initially was based on CR principle. That was, the report was written by the boss, which was confidential report, and that was filed with the organizations. But this was not a progressive kind of thing because it was not looking at the developmental aspect that was meant for reward and punishment. That concept changed as we progress further. And today, if you look at it, is more developmental. If you find any organization as to what kind of system they operate, is it performance management? They will say it is performance management based on feedback system. So we started hearing about 360 degrees performance management system that is in operation. Similarly, in training and development, it was considered as a ritual initially, but today we have not only started investing in the training and development, considering this as an investment, but also having an evaluation system that is operating. So what we find that there is a total change that has occurred as far as these organizations are concerned. I will stop here. I'll continue with this few concepts that is left out for tomorrow. Thank you very much. If you have any question, please feel free to ask.